So for anyone who hasn't been following the drama between Vaush and I, my last two videos provide context and I'll link them below. But long story short, I made a couple videos on how Vaush's audience, rhetoric, and behavior makes leftist spaces hostile to other black leftists who simply disagree with him. And I recently ended up debating with him. This video will be my thoughts on that. And I know that this might seem silly, I already have 2 videos on Vaush, and it seemed like plenty of other people made my points clear for me. But I think what happened was really wild, and I wanted to voice some of my thoughts on it in order to wrap it up for myself. For those of you who haven't seen the debate, I'll link it in the description below. But let's go over a short summary. Vaush and I start off talking about my video, where I say it's an issue that black people who disagree with Vaush are often compared to Nazis, and how that makes a hostile place for any black person that has the misfortune of disagreeing with him. I start by talking about how black people simply wanting their own spaces away from white people is not the same as segregationists. Vaush stands by his claim that they might as well be, and then we start talking about separatists along with colonialism. For about an hour, Vaush asks me if I think genocide is okay in the name of anti-colonialism, and compares the removal of colonizers to the Holocaust. He also makes the claim that I'm essentializing the white race with colonizers.
I'm gonna try this one more time. Do you think crime in America is a black problem?
Maybe you should try something else. After this, my audio goes out for some reason, and then I rejoin the stream. When this happens, there's a shift, and the tone seems to calm down. I talk about how listening, rather than reacting, is important, as many of us know very little.
Whenever you make your ethno-city, whatever in America, just don't make any side
I like, literally don't want to. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just making a point about, like, being able to listen to people who are colonized, people who are oppressed, like give them space to talk about their pain instead of just, comparing them to Hitler. And Vaush insists that he's being reasonable in comparing me to white nationalists and my thoughts to genocide.
One of the reasons why I make these comparisons is because I don't think a lot of people realize how close everything we do and talk about is to fascism.
This was the debate in a nutshell, but of course, if you have the stamina, check out the whole debate in the link below to see it in detail. So now, let's talk about the debate. This debate was 3.5 hours long. There's too much to go over, and I'm not going to get everything that I found wrong. Some key issues I addressed in the debate, but won't go over here, are Vaush saying that we don't essentialize crime to black people, therefore we shouldn't essentialize colonialism to white people.
I am all for attacking the system of colonialism. I am against essentializing it as a product of a given racial group, product of a given racial group, product of a given racial group, product of a given racial group.
There's multiple points where he calls me a reverse racist.
I think you're racist, not stupid.
And there were a lot of bizarre slippery slope fallacies. One is where Vaush tried to get me to say that we should find the single most oppressed person on earth and ask them if they wanted to nuke the world.
It seems like the most ethical way to handle all of this is to find the single most oppressed person on Earth, like a disabled trans woman somewhere in Bangladesh, and ask them if they want to nuke the rest of the planet.
I just don't know how to reply besides saying, like a really strange slippery slope fallacy. Like, I'm saying that colonized people should have the autonomy to decolonize themselves. And you're saying that we should find the most oppressed person in the world and ask them if we should nuke someone. Like, do you see how that's not the same thing? This is pretty much the debate in a nutshell. Should colonized people be allowed to fight colonialism if they're genocidal? Well, of course, genocide's wrong, but my point is that colonized people have the right to their own self-determination. So with this logic, you're saying that whoever's the most oppressive person in the world should be able to nuke everyone. No. As I said, there's too much to cover in this video. Though I address these points within the debate, there's much more to expand on, and I want to ask people to make their own content addressing any issues I leave out, or topics they find important. With that said, there are some key points that I really want to focus on in this video. The first topic that I want to discuss is how homophobia in black people was understood. In the debate, Vaush says,
black people are more homophobic than white people by a pretty significant amount.
So when Vaush said this, I should have questioned this. Black people certainly do have an issue with homophobia. I'm just not sure that it's more than white people. I can't seem to find a study or survey that goes over this. And despite what the influx of pro-LGBT ads might have you think, you might be surprised to find that American society is pretty homophobic. I see homophobia rampant wherever I go, and I'm not sure how to quantify if black people are more homophobic than white people. And I'm worried about erasing all the queer black people there are, and the many black people I've met who are against homophobia. But I also want to point out that the homophobia that black Americans emulate comes directly from colonialism. There were many enslaved people who had no issues with homosexuality until slavery, where many of them were indoctrinated into Christian values. Vaush says that
in a lot of African countries, they consider homosexuality to be a component of Western propaganda.
And I was confused by this because much of Africa didn't have a homophobia problem until much of it was colonized by Europe. In addition, there's been a long history of white missionaries spreading Christianity and homophobia along with it. There's actually a really beautiful documentary called God Loves Uganda that goes over the topic. All this to say, I think when we talk about the homophobia that black people have, it's important to understand the influence that colonialism has had on spreading homophobia to enslaved and colonized people. The next topic that I want to talk about is separatism. Vaush seems to think that separatism can only be violent and says,
which is why in your video you said that the oppressed have a right to determine whether they would continue to live with their oppressors. And we know when you said that, you didn't just mean buying out properties that were colonized so that the people left of their own volition. We know it doesn't end with that.
Again, I already explained separatism in my first video, in the part that Vaush skipped. I show them Key and Peele Negro Town clip and talk about Wakanda. These are both fantasy places where only black people live and are free of white supremacy. These places are fantastical ideas that demonstrate why black people might have a desire to keep as much distance as possible from white supremacy. While Vaush is sure that separatism can only happen violently, separatism is not necessarily violent. Carr, another YouTuber whose channel you should check out, explains it better than me.
I'd like to set the record straight on black separatism because a lot of people seem to get it wrong in online spaces. The best way, I think, to visualize it for anyone listening, separatism is basically self-determination and creating as much space away from your oppressors as possible, allowing you to act upon that self-determination. If that creating space from oppressors requires violence, then it requires violence. It doesn't have to, though. You can talk about Rosewood, Tulsa. You can talk about MOVE in Philadelphia. MOVE was a black separatist movement, and the cops bombed it, and they killed 8 children, and they burnt down a block of townhomes. So this organization was not responsible for anyone being hurt in their town whatsoever. They literally just wanted to do what they saw, mind you, white people doing throughout the country, building compounds and building their own internal insular support networks and dual power structures. That's what they were doing. They were doing the same thing that many groups of white people in the militia movement throughout Oregon and Washington State and Michigan were doing themselves. Except, they weren't fucking lunatics like David Koresh or anything like that, but they literally got bombed for it. And they were almost all killed. That's ultimately what separatism is about, is creating that space between the oppressors and the oppressed or plundered people so that they can act upon that self-determination. It's never been about ethnic cleansing. It's been about creating a safe distance.
Carr brings up Rosewood, Tulsa, and the 1985 MOVE bombing, not because any of these communities were explicitly separatist, but because these movements have aspects of separatism, and they're about black people being able to govern their own lives, creating their own power structures, and creating as much distance from white supremacy as possible. But Vaush paints black separatism as...
You could never argue ethically for an ethno-state. That it would always be an unjustifiable extreme, that there are always ways to address colonization without going as far as excluding an entire racial group.
First off, if black Americans did go to Africa, to a place where there were no white people, this still wouldn't be an ethno-state. I should have corrected this point during the debate. An ethno-state is made up of only one ethnicity. And I don't say this as a gotcha moment, but to point out that the way that people talk about Africa is as if it's made up of one ethnicity of black people. This understanding is inaccurate. Africa is the most genetically diverse continent in the world. There are over 2,000 languages. Even if there were a country with only black Africans, it wouldn't be an ethno-state as it's made up of multiple ethnicities. Secondly, there are indigenous people who are isolationist, and this is a kind of ethno-state where they truly are a singular ethnicity and visitors aren't allowed. While I don't see black separatists wanting to live in isolation to this extreme, I don't think this would be wrong if it happened. I think Vaush truly believes that I'm advocating for violent separatism, and I'm simply not. There's a number of ideas I could think of separatism without violence. Buy a plot of land off the grid and build your own community, or move to places in Africa that already have an all-black or nearly all-black population. There's a number of options where I can see black separatists peacefully living out their lives while practicing separatism. I understand that Vaush's concern is that this state would turn into what he thinks to be inevitable extremes.
What if a person who's black in a black ethno-state falls in love with a white person? Can they raise mixed children in a black ethno-state? Do they have to leave? Are they excised? Can their child leave? Is their child going to be taken from them? How far do you go that down? 1/2 black, 1/4 black, 1/8 black? Do the police come? Do they show up? Is miscegenation banned in these areas? To what extent are cultural affects banned? Is white TV allowed in a black ethno-state? Because ethno-states tend to be pretty protective of the perceived culture of a racial group. What happens to people of different cultures who come in there? What if there are black people who disagree with the values of the black people in the ethno-state that were created? Black Americans and black Africans are nothing alike because one of them are Americans and the other Africans. Black Africans aren't like black Africans. There's a fuck ton of stuff going on over there.
And I agree. These hypothetical circumstances are very extreme. But these hypotheticals do not engage with the actual sentiment of separatism, which is to allow black people to have their own governance and power structures, and to create as much distance from white supremacy as possible. These hypotheticals undermine the realities of Tulsa, Rosewood, and MOVE, that each focused on black people having their own governance without creating a dystopian ethno-state. There are in fact a large amount of black separatists who are unfortunately black supremacists, anti-Semitic, and homophobic. You might have heard of some of these groups, such as Nation of Islam or the new Black Panther Party, not to be confused with the original Black Panther Party. There have also been separatist movements to move to Liberia, and unlike Vaush being sure that this would create a dystopian ethno-state, the main issue with this was that the black settlers had more access to wealth than Liberians and assumed positions of power. While these groups and movements unfortunately hold a number of issues, they are not a reflection of every way that separatism can be practiced, because separatism in itself is not fundamentally hateful. These movements and ideas are also not all or nothing. They are much more complicated and require much more attention to truly understand, rather than only talking about them as a hypothetical dystopia for the purpose of winning a debate. So finally, why am I saying all this? Perhaps it seems like I'm splitting hairs or suggesting that black people pack our bags and move to Africa, but that's not really the purpose of my argument here. As I've said many times, I'm not a separatist, and it's extremely bizarre that me, of all people, has become the face of Black separatism and Black nationalism to thousands of white people. Seriously, I'm not sure people can understand how weird this is for me. So, why am I saying all this? Well, I'm saying all this because I keep on seeing white leftists accuse Black people of being segregationist when they say that their space is for Black people. I'll see white leftists accuse Black people of wanting to start a race war when they talk about how white people need to deal with their white supremacy. I'll see white leftists mischaracterize separatism as if it's fundamentally hateful. The reason why I brought all this up in my original video was to point out that people are making unnecessary and false accusations against Black people based on their misunderstandings. I brought this up to say that you don't seem to know what separatism or Black nationalism is, so try to understand it before having an opinion. So many people here didn't even hear about Black nationalism until a botched Vaush debate, and then had no idea how to confirm if an ideology of Black liberation was somehow the equivalent to Nazism. Maybe there's a lot you don't know. So I wanted to ask the white people who had these misunderstandings to stop attacking Black people just because you watched Vaush, and maybe take some time to understand and listen. All right, the next topic I'd like to talk about is genocide.
You're speed running all the talking points that I hear from white nationalists. If you want to address the power difference, you can do that without genocide.
So many people were accusing me of being okay with genocide that I really thought I must have said, I'm cool with genocide. I actually went back and watched all 3.5 hours of the debate again to see where I say that genocide is okay, but I couldn't find it. Because I never do. I make it very clear that I'm against genocide, and that my point is that colonized people should have the right to make their own decisions on their own colonial situation. I think what people are referring to is when Vaush asked me about removing white South African people and comparing that to the Holocaust.
When it comes to South Africa, what do you think of the 6 million white people who live in that country? Do you think the Black people, who are by far the majority, have a right to remove the white population?
I think that they would have a right to do that, but I think that would be really harsh, and I think that they're not even going to do that.
Out of curiosity, do you know how many Jews died in the Holocaust?
I think 6 million.
Do you know what Hitler tried to do with them before the Holocaust began?
See, this is what I'm saying. Like,
Answer the
me being
question.
like people should have the right to self-determination.
Answer the question.
You are literally comparing me to Hitler and Nazis right now.
Answer the question. What did he try to do before he killed them?
I'm not going to answer the question because you literally are proving my point.
So there are a lot of people who are saying that I'm genocidal, and I just want to clear up what I mean. What I mean to say is that there is no amount of violence that colonized people can enact towards their colonizers that will ever compare to what colonizers have done to them. That compares to the millions of kidnapped and enslaved people, to the thousands of years of history and way of life that has been wiped out, to the languages that have been lost, to the entire caste system that has been created, to the relocation and murder of millions, to the subjugation of entire nations, and to the subjugation and profit of stolen land. And how dare you compare the removal of those who have colonized stolen land and who have subjugated indigenous people as to being the same as the Holocaust? Colonized people have every right to say, you have slaughtered and subjugated us for hundreds of years, and you can no longer stay on stolen land. And as Kimberly Jones said this for Black people, I'll say it for all colonized people as well. You should consider yourself lucky that colonized people are looking for equality and not revenge. You have no right to be a part of this conversation. No right. How fucking dare you sit in your gaming chair and paint the real lives of colonized people as a hypothetical towards white genocide? You have no right. No right. And that, not because you think I'm genocidal, is the reason I keep on insisting that we need to shut the fuck up and leave the decisions of decolonization to colonized people. And if you think what I'm saying is comparable to the Holocaust, then maybe I'm not the one who needs to learn more about colonialism. Anyways, I hope that clears up any confusion. But maybe I should be even clearer. Someone showed me a tweet by Swamp Communist that deconstructed my position in a nutshell. It says, the person he is debating is literally just talking about self-determination. Vaush is only introducing genocide to formulate a loaded question. If his opponents say, no, they're not allowed to do that, then there's a question of who's telling them they can't, and the whole concept of self-determination is undermined. And this is exactly the position I was in. There are two main issues. One is that if I say that colonized people can't do what they need to do in order to decolonize themselves, I play into the fear of retribution argument. It's a classically racist argument that Vaush himself acknowledges.
It does scare me a little bit when I see stuff like this from people who purport to be on the left, because it makes me worry sometimes that the conservative stereotype of anti-racism is alive in some people, that some people are driven principally by resentment, not a desire to make things equal, but rather a desire to take out the historical pain of oppression on the oppressor group. I'm totally down for understanding it, but you have to criticize it too, you know? I understand the concerns of neo-Nazis because I've argued with so many of them.
And after the video, there were even right-wingers praising him for his arguments. The fear of retribution is used to argue against letting colonized people from having their full autonomy.
You keep essentially implying that it's okay to engage in retribution. It seems like we pose an existential threat to the oppressed colonized people of the world, one which they would perhaps have almost unlimited legitimacy in ridding themselves of.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we need to trust colonized people. And having a fear of retribution is a part of what keeps colonizers from giving colonized people their autonomy back.
In this country, which is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people that when people of color get power, they're going to want to treat us the way we have treated them. That is the major problem in the United States right now, is white fear of retribution. I think we could give up that fear. I think we have misjudged the intelligence and the humanity of a whole lot of people of color, and that's why we're afraid of them.
This is not only an issue, but the issue I'm trying to point out. We don't trust colonized people to make decisions for themselves. If we did, they would no longer be colonized. I'm not arguing for genocide, but for colonized people to have their own autonomy. Because of this, I certainly wasn't going to play into the fear of retribution argument. Instead, I try to say, I think genocide is bad, but we need to let colonized people make decisions for themselves.
Again, you're like attacking a straw man. It's like, great, we can all agree that genocide is bad.
Backpedaling like crazy. We need to address a couple of fundamental
I'm not really
points.
backpedaling. I'm trying to establish what I'm saying, because you're accusing me of saying I'm cool with genocide, and that's never claimed that
the video,
like, you can disagree with that, but you just maybe need to like understand what these things are before like making a video about it.
But I think I do. The video.
I know you think you do. Like, we're just talking about like colonialism, and like even when we're talking about like people like having the autonomy to get rid of colonialism, like there's all these different situations of what that looks like. And then your point is that I'm like Hitler. You know what I'm saying?
And at the end of the day, this was used as proof of me saying that I'm okay with white genocide. When ultimately, what I'm trying to say is that colonized people are not trusted, and we should trust them, not patronize them. I also want to talk about an important point brought up in Vaush's comment section. This comment was written by a DOS man who claims to be a political science professor. This person states, most importantly, however, both Flowers and Vaush appear to miss the idea that the primary challenge in post-colonial settings in both Africa and elsewhere is not the reclaiming of power or property from Western hands, but addressing the long-term political and economic legacies that were created by colonial administration of these regions. In the context of Africa, the levers of political and economic power have largely been in African hands since the states achieved independence, but these regimes have been seriously hampered by the lingering effects of colonial rules. The effects include, but are not limited to, weak state institutions, tendencies to political and economic clientelism, over-reliance on commodity-based economies, and a significant urban and rural divide. From what I understand, this person is completely right. The issue with African countries is no longer one of reclaiming power, but dealing with the economic legacy of colonialism, which makes the fear of retribution argument even more irrelevant. It's simply not in the realm of what's actually happening. And this all brings me to my next point. Though we've established that genocide and retribution are not even topics that colonized people are entertaining, what exactly is genocide? During the debate, I was genuinely unsure if removing colonizers is genocide. What I understood about genocide is that it can be tricky to determine. Much of my understanding of it came from the Rohingya genocide, where their oppression wasn't considered genocide by the UN until 2017. So is removing colonizers genocide? I really wasn't sure. I should have just said, I'm not sure what the definitions of genocide are, paused to look it up, and discussed it from there, instead of me responding with, I'm not sure, or I think that's okay, as any sense of uncertainty was seen as evidence of me being pro-genocide, and someone who was all too close to white nationalism but naively couldn't see it. So after the debate, I looked up if violent decolonization is considered genocide. I didn't find a clear answer on that, but what I did find on the legal definition was this. Genocide is A, killing members of the group, B, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, C, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, D, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, E, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. For the legal definition, the intent is a deciding factor, and there must be a proven intent on the part of perpetrators to physically destroy a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group. Cultural destruction does not suffice, nor does it intention to simply disperse a group. Also, the victims of genocide must be deliberately targeted, not randomly, because of their real or perceived membership of one of the 4 groups protested under the convention, which again are national, ethnic, racial, and religious groups. After reading this, something that struck me as really frustrating was that the gotcha moment where my views were compared to genocide didn't constitute as a legal definition of genocide, which Vaush specifically references. As I've said, there are non-violent ways that you can remove colonizers from your country, and simply removing them isn't genocide, though depending on how it happens, it certainly could be. It's not something that I want to focus on too much because at the end of the day, I'm not advocating for the removal of white South Africans, and I don't think that black South Africans are either. The reason why I'm saying this is because this was supposed to be the gotcha moment for me. I figured that Vaush wouldn't dare to accuse someone of promoting genocide unless they were certain that it was, because that would be really shitty, right? And thousands of people went with this too, and ripped into me for this, on something they themselves didn't understand. It's just like, I've tried to think of what to say for this part, but I'm just at a loss for words. Seriously, you can just go fuck yourself. But let's not stop there. There's more to understand when it comes to genocide. The legal definition of genocide conveniently leaves out colonialism. It's important to note that when the UN adopted the legal definition, the only African states present were Egypt, which had recently come to independence, Liberia and South Africa, which were colonized, and Ethiopia. And the only reason why Ethiopia had never been colonized was because people had come from all over Africa to fight the Italian occupation. Multiple European state members of the UN were colonial powers. Thousands of people who were under colonial rule had distant and even recent memories of genocide that were perpetrated by those who colonized them, and these people were not represented in the legal definition of genocide. Obviously, this definition is incomplete in a number of ways, which is why there are numerous definitions of genocide. There's the legal definition, functional, academic, political, sociological, colloquial, and so on. The 2014 definition of Powell and Parastarakis describes genocide as the violent erasure of a collective identity and understand genocide as a multidimensional process that works through the destruction of the sociological institutions that maintain collective identity, as well as through the physical destruction of human individuals. So given that these definitions all get different aspects of genocide right, while leaving out other important traits, does this mean that the Mau Mau uprising that helped free Kenya from British colonial rule was considered genocide? Was the Haitian Revolution that freed them from the French genocide? Was the removal of the Italian occupation in Ethiopia genocide? Well, given that these events are not referred to as genocide, it seems clear that they have not been ruled as one. But it's important to understand that as much as we'd like to say that genocide is clear-cut, it seems that many of those who study genocide would say that it can be more complicated than that, especially around anti-colonialist violence. The road to decolonization is extremely complicated, and we should handle each situation with care. We should seek our understanding from those who study colonialism and those who are facing it. We should seek to support colonized people rather than making unrealistic hypotheticals about genocide that spread mistrust of colonized people, all for the purpose of winning a debate. Now, at this point, some of you might be thinking, these are some good points, Lua. Why didn't you bring this up in the debate? Well, that would have been great if I had known that's what we'd be debating. There were so many comments saying that I didn't debate this well, and I find it frustrating because I had debated two topics that I wasn't prepared for. It's not that I just didn't know that we'd be debating this. We specifically agreed to talk about something else. In fact, Vaush DM'd me and said, if you were to come on, what specifically would you want to talk about? I'm happy to talk about our disagreements, but I wouldn't want it to be some conversation in a conversation. We're talking about what we talked about before. We should just choose a topic to discuss. No? Or I said, why would we talk about anything else other than accusations I've made against you and that you've made against me? What would be the point to picking any other topic to discuss? Vaush replied, well, it could turn into a time-wasting maelstrom of constantly citing and looking through video timestamps to make points that could otherwise just be made by stating the positions you believe. And I said, I think you and I have made our positions clear. The clarity of our positions isn't the issue. My issue is the misinformation you've spread and the fact that you feel empowered to belittle people while doing it. At which point Vaush said, all right, you can come on, signifying that we had an understanding, but also acting as if I was the one asking to come on, not him asking me. Based on our agreement, I thought that we had come to an understanding that we'd focus on the accusations made on his stream and my video, which focus on how his content and audience make leftist spaces more hostile to the black leftist who simply disagree with him. And I did talk about some of those accusations, such as how Vaush needlessly painted St. Andrew and No Name as segregationist, or wanting to start a race war. But this quickly turned into a debate on anti-colonialist violence and black separatist states, both topics which had nothing to do with what we agreed on, and that I also had no interest in debating. As I said, I'm not a separatist. I'm not interested in the hours of research I would need to prepare for that. And I simply don't have much to say on the matter, let alone debate it. And while I have some thoughts on colonialism, this is something else that I would need to spend months researching and also talking with people to better understand. I don't think I would ever want to debate that topic with someone for fear of misrepresenting people. But because these topics were brought up and Vaush argued a fear of retribution and a misrepresentation of separatism, I felt like I had to say something. And what I had to say simply didn't matter. By the end of it, many concluded that they're justified in their fear of retribution of colonized people and that all separatists want a dystopian ethno-state. Which brings me to my next point. Vaush and I both had a debate. There were two of us. So why am I the only one expected to do research? Throughout the entire debate, Vaush used hypotheticals, and it seems that this is because he doesn't know any real-life examples, except for one about Rwanda, which he Googled during the debate.
Yeah, I don't know shit about the Rwandan genocide. I don't know it, yeah. I don't know that much about the specifics of Kenya in this case.
Vaush doesn't seem to have knowledge on colonialism, which would explain why he doesn't use any real-life examples of anti-colonialism or separatism, and can only paint the issue in terms of unrealistic hypotheticals.
It seems like the most ethical way to handle all of this is to find the single most oppressed person on Earth, like a disabled trans woman somewhere in Bangladesh, and ask them if they want to nuke the rest of the planet.
But I, at the very least, had some knowledge on the matter, which is more than Vaush can say. So why am I the one mainly being criticized? I had no idea that we were going to talk about these topics. Yet Vaush is the one who brought up these topics and knew nothing about them. So what's his excuse? There are multiple times where Vaush mocks my understanding.
I'm starting to wonder if you're educated enough to have this conversation. Your sociological analysis would get you laughed out of any undergraduate degree, and I can say that with the absolute confidence of a person who didn't get laughed out of my classes.
My Indigenous Studies teacher said himself that colonization never stopped, and this was a really important reality to understand. In America, we've never stopped living on stolen land that Indigenous people have never stopped fighting for. I don't think these beliefs would get me laughed out of a classroom, when it's the very place I learned it. But what I do think would get you laughed out of those classes is using an old and racist fear of retribution argument against someone who is advocating that colonized people should have the right to self-determination. Vaush constantly mocks what I'm saying as a result of not being educated enough, which would imply that he does care about education. But what did his audience learn about separatism or anti-colonialism from him? I'm tempted to say that nothing was learned, but it's even worse. Vaush validates a fear of retribution, which is used to keep colonized people from having their own autonomy back. And Vaush mischaracterizes all separatists as those who want to have a violent and dystopian ethno-state. And now there are thousands of people who knew little about anti-colonialism and separatism, who know just as little now, but are sure that these things are genocidal and dystopian. I think this is why leftists shouldn't debate Vaush. And I know, most of you told me that already. I thought it would be fine because I didn't intend to take him seriously. I thought I'd have a laugh about how every black leftist that he's debated, that at least I know of, was essentially a Nazi in his eyes. And I think that's really funny. I mean, we can't all be black Nazis, you know? I intended to laugh about this. But my biggest mistake was not doing that and responding to him sincerely. If Vaush invites you to talk as a guest to listen to him, then there's a good chance he'll be able to have your views represented. But if it's a debate, that's not going to happen. You're going to end up dealing with extreme Nazi hypotheticals on a topic you didn't even know you would be debating. And this leads to some really extreme misinformation. In my case, thousands of people had no idea what separatism is and no interest in colonialism. Still don't. And now they think they're genocidal and dystopian. Whatever you're debating will be misrepresented to thousands of people, and that's damage that can't be undone. Debates, at least the kind I'm talking about, lead to misinformation, not understanding. I'm clearly not good at debates. I'm much better at essays, and I can live with that. Essays often take me weeks and even months to put out because I research what I'm writing. I don't want to spread misinformation. I want to recognize that what I'm saying is a part of a larger context and a moving conversation. And I'd prefer to handle these topics with care, and debates fundamentally fail at this. They will spread a misrepresentation of whatever you have to say to thousands of people, all for the sake of winning. As someone wise once told me, who needs cointelpro when you have debate bros? Vaush said that he would be open to having me come on again.
I actually wouldn't mind talking to her again in the future.
And I was thinking that maybe he could bring on some of his friends, and I could bring on some of my black comrades who would do a much better job than me in not caring what Vaush has to say. Or I could even come on and play a drinking game where everyone takes a shot whenever I'm compared to a Nazi. But at the end of the day, it's just not worth it. And not only because I don't want to be responsible for the people who get alcohol poisoning, but because whatever you talk about will be misrepresented to thousands, and we especially can't afford to do this on black issues. So after the debate, I felt awful. The debate was so painfully cringy, and everyone told me that it would be. Everyone warned me not to do it, that I'll simply be misrepresented. And I knew I would be. I made 2 videos on it, but I did it anyways. And I feel bad that people following me or who cared about me ended up watching 3 hours of someone using Nazi hypotheticals to assert the fear of retribution argument and painted all separatists as those who want a dystopian ethno-state. I felt like I had really messed up, but not because I said anything I regretted, but because I didn't do what I came to do. I came there to dunk on Vaush, to laugh about how he can't disagree with black people without comparing us to Nazis. But I didn't do that. I got caught up in trying to reason with him. There's even a moment where Vaush says I'm being patronizing, and I respond.
I'll try not to be patronizing. I'll do my best.
What? That's what I came here to do. I should have leaned into being compared to white nationalists, or when my ideas were compared to the Holocaust, I should have just laughed in his face at how ridiculous these statements were. I know that a lot of people will just see this as being petty or as a reflection of useless drama, but I don't think it is. I think there's power in being able to laugh at things that are fucked up. That's why I have so much comedy in my media. Laughter is a way to take your power back. And I knew that if I could do that, then it wouldn't matter how many debate bros dogpiled me. I would have felt successful, but I didn't. And this is where I really felt that I had failed. I failed at laughing at the ridiculousness of this person, and all I ended up doing was participate in a debate where Vaush argued for the fear of retribution and misrepresented separatism to thousands of people who think his concerns are justified. And what happened after that was an emotional roller coaster. Oddly enough, there were a lot of comments from Vaush fans saying they liked both of us, appreciated what I had to say, and subscribed to me. This was a huge surprise. I wasn't expecting any positive feedback from Vaush fans, let alone new subs, and I need to address this. Vaush compared anti-colonialist violence to the Holocaust to argue for a fear of retribution of colonized people. If that wasn't a red flag, then this isn't the channel for you. I understand that you're intending to be supportive, and I appreciate that sentiment, but I want to cultivate a community of people who are ready and eager to talk about dismantling racism and colonialism, or as Scott Ainsley puts it, those who can be co-conspirators. I want to find people who are eager to have this conversation, and much of Vaush's rhetoric is a hindrance to this. So if Vaush's rhetoric seemed appropriate, I of course can't force you to, but I sincerely ask that you unsubscribe. Anyways, though I got some strangely positive feedback on my Twitter and YouTube channel, the vast majority of the feedback were people saying the debate was too stressful to watch, or Vaush fans who were accusing me of being genocidal. And I felt very stressed out. My head was full of these comments, and I kept trying to argue with my thoughts, but I couldn't keep up before the next thought of someone accusing me of wanting an ethno-state popped into my head. Later on, I started to feel better as friends reached out to me and I talked to comrades. My friends bought me drinks and we talked about how fucked up the debate was, and people reached out to me to let me know that they appreciated me. I felt shaken, but I was doing better. Until I saw a clip of me that had 47,000 views, and most of the comments were saying that I was genocidal. The last time I saw it, it had gone up to 360,000. This clip was deleted, so I can't find it, but I'll get to more on why I think it was deleted later. The point is, seeing this many people who thought I was genocidal shook me. It might be hard for people to understand why this is so jarring. When all this happened, I had around 13,000 subscribers, but my channel is still small enough to easily read every comment and interact with everyone who's engaging with my videos. I've never had a video or anything with me in it have this many views. I never had this many eyes on me. This was the first time, and the majority of those eyes thought I was genocidal. In addition, it was one thing to read angry comments on Vaush's comment section. I knew that these people were simply Vaush fans. But it was another thing to read these comments on Twitter. I had no idea who these people were. Did other people that I've been getting to know see this clip? And do they now think that I'm genocidal? Do they really think I want a dystopian ethno-state? My friend Nick and I were going to have a fundraiser for their sister Gina, and I wasn't sure if the people I invited were going to show up. After all, there were thousands of people saying that I was genocidal and wanted an ethno-state. I mentally prepared for having to let go of friends and say goodbye to people I've been getting to know, and this made me more depressed. Someone made a meme saying that I was pro-Israeli settlements because I was anti-colonialist. Later on, I also heard that Vaush fans were watching my Twitter, screenshotting everything, and posting it to Reddit. Hey everyone, there's also been some more drama that I just wanted to update everyone about. Maybe talk about it in here instead of making a separate video for it. But there's obviously been a bunch of reaction videos to this, and I haven't watched, I don't think, any of them, because even the positive ones, because it stresses me out. But there was this one instance where I actually had a conversation with someone called Dr. Heem Doubt, and this person messaged me on Twitter. They said specifically, I prefer discussions to debates. I'm genuinely curious to understand my guests. And to me, that was really important because I didn't want to argue because, as I've said in this video, it just makes a misrepresentation of whatever I'm talking about. So especially for colonialism and anti-colonialism, I don't want to argue about it because when it turns to an argument, people ask hypotheticals like, well, what if there's a genocide? What if we want everyone to move? And the reason why I have an issue with this is because it's not what Indigenous people are asking for. So you end up dealing with this hypothetical that's really scary, that is not what people are asking for. And then, land back or things like that get painted with fear, with a needless fear of giving Indigenous people their autonomy. So I didn't want to argue. I was like, okay, this person wants to understand and listen. Yeah, I'll come on. So I came on, and this person argued that we can't just give Indigenous people their land back. We can't give them the full right to self-determination.
I don't think anyone has any particular right to a piece of land.
People aren't literally saying that we're going to kick every person out of America. People just want these certain territories back. People want these certain places back. And people want to actually own that land, not have to pay taxes to the American government, but just have it be theirs. The conversation about kicking people out is just not what's happening. And also, there's an issue specifically of white people still benefiting off of colonialism. Even if they're immigrants from Europe in the past 3 generations, they're still benefiting directly from the effects of colonialism. So
what benefit are you referring to? Sorry, can I ask what benefit you're referring to specifically?
The benefits of white supremacy.
Gotcha. Okay. I think like all leftists say we should listen to indigenous people. We should try to alleviate the suffering. We should try to, if they're, you know, all of these positions we hold. I guess it's just that last step of like what did you say? Self-determination. That we're like, yeah, I don't really know about that, you know.
And they also had some arguments about how we should equate light-skinned black people to white people.
I mean, it depends who you ask. If you ask the darker skinned black people, they'd say that sometimes they're white.
But it just got really weird, and I said, I don't want to argue with these things. And I removed myself from the conversation. It's just not something that I want to try to convince someone to, you know, my thoughts about right now. So I'm sorry that it's like abrupt, and okay. I just feel like really frustrated, and like I'm just not interested in arguing.
Okay.
You know, a few days later, I asked them, hey, can you take this video down? I don't want to participate in an argument about these topics. I think anti-colonialism needs to be listened to, not argued. And had I known that it was going to be an argument rather than just listening and understanding, then I wouldn't have come on. This person said, I will let you know that I would make a public statement that you asked for me to take it down because you realize it made you look bad. Is that if you wish for me to make it private, I'll consider it. Yeah, this really frustrated me because I'm not lying about it. It's not about me looking bad. I already look bad to thousands of people. My point is that I feel violated because I did not want to participate in an argument that spreads more fear and distrust of colonized people and giving them full autonomy over their land. The whole reason why I brought up separatism, for example, again, wasn't because I'm a separatist, but because I kept on seeing people misrepresent it. And so I wanted to say, listen, you don't know exactly what separatism is, and you might disagree with it if you still knew what it was, but this is what it is. Because I don't want to misrepresent people. I don't want to misrepresent ideas. These are all very sensitive topics, and I don't want to be a part of the misinformation or fear, needless fear spread. And that is why I'm asking for this person to take this video down. It's not that I look bad. I'm going to look bad to this person's audience no matter what. And I think what hurts the most is I couldn't possibly be saying these things from a place of care, from a place of wanting freedom for everyone. But instead that I'm just an angry black woman separatist who is also genocidal. I'm just not a human to these people. And yeah, I'm just gonna keep on making videos. I'm just gonna keep on going. I think it's the biggest fuck you I can say to all these Vaush fans, to all the debate bros. I'm gonna keep on making content. Thanks for listening, everyone. Now back to the rest of the video. I know at some point this would blow over, but I didn't know when. And in the meantime, I felt like I didn't deserve to exist. I tried drinking to give myself some relief, and I was in a very bad place. I was overwhelmed by depression, and at that point, there's not much you can do except for lean into it. I made a post about how I'm going to make a short video on my final thoughts before moving on, which is funny because it's this video and it's not short at all. I knew I had to make a video to give myself my own peace of mind, but I was dreading it. Making a video meant that I would have to watch the whole debate again in order to find timestamps. I didn't want to relive those moments that were used to paint me as genocidal, but I knew myself well enough to know that it's important for my voice to be heard in order for me to move on. So I did that. One night at 2 a.m. I realized this was it. I put on my headphones and I watched the debate again. I felt really nervous. I kept on waiting for the gotcha moment where I say that genocide is okay, and I couldn't find it because it never fucking happened. Y'all just suck. After this, I was doing a lot better. My friend Nick and I had the fundraiser for their sister Gina, whose husband had a very sudden stroke and is his main caregiver. You can donate still in the description below. When this fundraiser happened, I really thought that the people I invited wouldn't show up, but everyone still came. I saw Vaush trending on Twitter one night, and I was worried that it was people continuing to say that I'm genocidal and wanted an ethno-state, and when I clicked on it, there were hundreds of tweets of the clip I was in. But instead of people calling me genocidal, people were mad at Vaush for his racist rhetoric. I knew that people weren't necessarily defending me, they were upset with Vaush, but still, it felt extremely validating. All in all, I'm so thankful to everyone, to the people who supported me, or to those who have no idea who I am but saw racist rhetoric and intended to stop it. I almost felt as if I didn't need to make this video to be heard. heard. There were a number of tweets I went to go back to reference for this video, but were deleted. The clip that had over 360,000 views where people were saying I was genocidal was gone. I think the internet did its thing. And I know that wasn't about me, that was about Vaush. But still, I feel very grateful to everyone. I was in an awful place, and I was able to get out of that because people supported me. Thank you. Thank you to my friends who hung out with me and bought me drinks. Thank you to my girlfriend who was there whenever I had an anxious thought, and there were many. Thank you to everyone who still came to Nixon my fundraiser despite all the drama. Thank you to the Black people who don't know me but saw this nonsense and shut it down. Thank you to the people who made response videos in my defense. Thank you to the people who stuck up for me on Twitter. Thank you to all the DMs I got in support of me. Thank you, everyone. I know this might all seem sentimental or dramatic, but I was in a very painful and vulnerable place, and that support helped me so much. It made a very painful experience into a really beautiful one, so thank you. I'm grateful to everyone, and I also want to bring attention to a couple of other points. The first is that when I was going through all this, I had a realization that so many leftists who debated Vaush had gone through a similar set of emotions. I know this because people have reached out to me and talked to me about their own experiences, but I hadn't realized that it was this bad until it was something that I went through. Only not all of them were as lucky as me to have some of the support that I got. I had already made 2 videos on Vaush. Everything I talked about in my videos happened to me. I think this made it more obvious to people how much of a misrepresentation the debate was. Not only that, but the debate I was in blew up on Twitter, and I was able to find support from that too. But others didn't necessarily have the networks of support that I had. For others, they were humiliated on a platform larger than theirs, got attacked by debate bros, and that's where it ended. So while I was having a hard time for a few days, for others, this lasted for months. And that realization horrified me. It horrified me that other people were going through this too. That they also had been flooded with messages from debate bros who fundamentally had no idea what they intended to say, yet felt vindicated and humiliating them. The other people were also dealing with Vaush fans, screenshotting their every tweet to scrutinize and laugh at on Reddit. All this because they had dared to speak against their leader. This is not okay. I don't think people understand how intense and destructive of an experience this is. It seems that Vaush and his fans believe that people deserve this treatment because he's certain that we're comparable to Nazis, and the world is lucky to have Vaush to put us in our place. It seems that he believes that we're experiencing a backlash that is simply a part of the theater of YouTube drama.
I just want to say, guys, if I screenshotted every mean YouTube comment and Twitter reply that I got, I could make like a multi-day long video out of every video I make.
It seems that he believes that we deserve this treatment for having ideas he's ultimately not interested in understanding.
There's an ego who can't admit why he's wrong. They're suckers who can't prove when I'm wrong.
But this understanding is careless. This treatment is unnecessarily cruel, and no amount of fundraisers can change the needless harm this brings. My hope is that people can talk about these experiences rather than be silenced. Even though I was dreading it, I found it really empowering to go back and watch the debate I was in, to see the accusations of me being genocidal fundamentally come from a misrepresentation, rather than a reflection of what I actually believe. And going back and even making this video, I feel like I have the power to laugh in the face of what's happened, and I hope that others can find that freedom too. Before I wrap up, I want to point out that though we've been talking about Vaush and his fans, this isn't just a problem of debate bros. They're the loudest facets of a larger issue. On my channel, I made a couple of videos wondering why what's considered to be LeftTube is mostly white. Well, I think I solved the mystery. It's not necessarily a friendly space to Black content creators, and there are also so many Black content creators making videos in their own spaces. And it's not just smaller channels. There's Khadija, Intellectual Media, and Teen Noir, to name a few. At this point, I honestly think that many white leftists don't believe that there is more to explore in racism outside of Ben Shapiro and Nazis are bad. It seems that many white leftists are uninterested in watching media made by Black people, don't know any Black people, and have divorced their understanding of society away from colonialism and slavery. There are so many people who wonder how Vaush has gotten this far when he said the racist rhetoric he has. Well, he didn't just come this far alone. The environment he's in has encouraged this content. Okay, so I'm editing this, and I'm sorry, I'm mincing words here. LeftTubers will make a video on Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder, but won't say anything about Vaush and debate bros. How did this happen?
I understand the concerns of neo-Nazis, because I've argued with so many of them.
Black people have some stupid fucking opinions on race. Yeah, absolutely, fuck these people.
You let this happen. You watch this person shit on Black people, and when Black people spoke up, accuse us of cancel culture instead of Vaush being racist. You let this happen, because you don't give a shit about us. So yeah, case closed. We really did it, mystery team. Why aren't Black people on LeftTube? Because you wouldn't have listened anyways, and we don't want to waste our precious life convincing people who don't care. And that is exactly the environment that allowed this to grow and thrive. Anyways, I think it's very telling that, at least from what I saw, that after the debate, Vaush got ripped into by Black people. And it wasn't about leftism. It was about ending racist and colonialist rhetoric. And many Black people from different political ideologies immediately recognized it as such and shut it down. If it's primarily Black people and not white leftists who understand this rhetoric as racist, then it only makes sense that this kind of content would grow in a white leftist space. Thanks everyone for watching. I'm still going to make a video on whiteness, and I'm sure that this experience will contribute to this. But since I just made 3 Vaush videos and had a debate, I'm gonna take a little break before I start working on it again. In the meantime, if there are more debate bros who accuse me of being genocidal or wanting an ethno-state, which I'm sure there will be, I'm just gonna post this video. And if I'm still a genocidal separatist after that, then too bad. I'm gonna live my best life. Apparently we're forming our own ethno-state over here, and it's gonna be lit. We've got a hot tub, we're gonna go play some Persona, maybe a little Smash, and basically anyone can come to our ethno-state as long as you're not a debate bro. That way when we have parties, there's not gonna be like that one guy who wants to have a non-consensual debate with you, and we can just have a good time. So yeah, we're gonna live our best lives, so suck on that, debate bros. Thanks everyone! If you want to study up on leftist works, we've got a book club going on that's focused on Black authors. You can join on Patreon today. Going by is a list of my patrons, and thank you so much for supporting me. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and let me know in the comments what are some of your thoughts on how Black people are treated in white leftist spaces. Thanks everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.